But a security champion is generally someone who has been trained up by a security team to do the security work and be in charge of that thing for their team. They champion the cause of security. They've had extra training and attention. It's not the same as having an application security expert, but they will invade your culture in a good way.
You are listening to the Mindful Business Security Show, brought to you by Focivity, where we answer your questions and simplify information security for small businesses. Get the clarity you need to focus on the things that matter.
Well, hey there. I'm Accidental CISO, and you're listening to the Mindful Business Security Show. Companies that develop software, especially those that make software as a service products, have a responsibility to build secure software. But software projects are complex, and the cybersecurity threat landscape is constantly changing. Today, we're going to talk about application security and secure software development practices. Be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your friends. You can find us in your favorite podcast app. My guest today was once a touring professional musician. Today, she's a hacker, software developer, author, and educator. She's been coding for 30 years now, used to do counterterrorism for the Canadian government, and was even the CISO for the 42nd general election in Canada. She's a contributor to the Open Worldwide Application Security Project, known as OWASP, an organization that publishes some of the most popular industry guidelines used to build secure software development lifecycle processes. Her books, Alice and Bob Learn Application Security and Alice and Bob Learn Secure Coding, teach software developers about secure coding practices. When she isn't working, you can find her tending to her hobby farm where she grows flowers. I feel like everyone in cybersecurity has some sort of life goal related to becoming a farmer or hermit. But anyway, I'm glad to have you join me. Welcome to the show, Tanya Janca, aka She Hacks Purple.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time.
Yes, I've been thrilled to have you agree to come on the show because this is such an important topic. And I've been looking forward to doing this episode, I think, for like the 6 months since we scheduled it. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I was actually a music major in college in what feels like a past life now. And as a musician myself, I'd love to hear just a little bit about what your experience was like as a touring musician.
So I didn't actually tour that much. I played a lot of shows around. So I lived in Ottawa. So a lot of shows around Ontario, Perth, Montreal, like places where you could drive in a car, play the show, and then drive home in the middle of the night sort of thing. And then I only went on tours maybe to Toronto and Halifax. And I went on the Vans Warped Tour at one point down to New Mexico and Texas. But mostly it was a lot of recording albums and then just playing a lot of the same bars with the same like couple hundred people for many years. I did that for around 17 years. And I released 5 independent albums, and then I released albums with different bands. So I did folk music independently, and then I was in a bunch of punk rock bands. And then I learned to play drums at age 34 because I was like, let's do something new. And then I did sort of like a comedy troupe where we made jokes about, so we had like important songs like Kirk versus Picard because we need to know who's hotter. We do. And we had a song called Ottawa about how everyone from Ottawa is so hot. We should rename the city, right? Obviously. and other interesting songs like The Fashion Police, where I would just make fun of everyone's outfit that had come to see us play. Like, how do we not get beaten up?
That is hilarious. I had no idea. It's really funny. Like so many people in tech that you meet, like they have these other creative sides to the things that they do, and they're always doing something else in the background that I think helps balance and maybe it keeps us sane. I don't know.
I actually still release parody songs and music videos. So I did a music video earlier this year of Amy Winehouse's Rehab, except for she doesn't want to get a pen test. No. And then last year I did Closer by 9 Inch Nails, and I play all the different characters in the video. So I'm the drummer, I'm the guitarist, but it's closer to prod instead of God.
Okay. Oh my gosh, this is fun.
There's a lot of static analysis in that song, but anyway.
Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of people are like, what?
Yeah, we'll make sure we link to wherever this is on the internet and the show description stuff so that folks can find it. So how did you then pivot from music into security? Because you've had, I mean, obviously you spent many years doing music, but you've had quite a career in cybersecurity as well.
So I learned to code as a teenager, and then I got my first job the moment I turned 18. And then when I was 19, I started computer science in college. And so I played music in bars, and it sounds weird, but it really helped me pay rent. It was like a part-time job where like a couple, like 400 or 500 extra bucks a month is a lot when you are 18 years old. And so I did computer science and released an album at the same time. And then I started, it sounds weird, but I graduated during the dot-com burst. So I graduated in 2000, the worst time ever. And I remember like, gosh, I got to get more gigs or I'm not going to be able to pay rent. I'm just playing music till my computer science career works out, man. And then eventually I got another programming job. And so I would write code during the day and I'd play music at night. And I play gigs like pretty much every week, at least a couple times every single month. And eventually my computer science career kind of got bigger and my music career kind of started getting smaller. Because at one point it was like, which one's going to be the one, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to make it in music and also have enough food to eat. It's really
Yes.
hard. And also around that time, Napster. And so everyone just started stealing albums instead. And so I remember I released, I think, my fourth album. And so I'd given the journalist a copy of it to listen to. And then we're for a few days and he was writing an article about it. And then we did a photo shoot. And during the photo shoot, he's like, yeah, I played it for a bunch of my friends and seven of seven friends said it's really good. And I'm like, how many illegal copies did you make of my album and distribute before it was released? And he's like, 20. And I don't know if he torrented it, but like it got so that I couldn't sell the copies I made. It got so that I couldn't even afford to pay the studio fees. Do you know what I mean? And I'm
Yeah.
like, if I can't even, I'm just losing money on this. It can't be a career. And like people just stopped valuing music, if that makes sense. And so I kind of had to move on. I have a funny story. So when I played music, I remember people saying like, you should put malware so that when people download your album, it attacks them. And I'm like, that's wrong. I would never do that. Someone did that with my books. So pirates beware. If you download Tanya's books illegally, some of those are malware.
Oh,
You've been warned. Yeah, and it was not me, because then I wouldn't tell you.
yeah. And your handle, She Hacks Purple, references what I think is a really important concept in security, especially in application security. Can you explain a little bit about that, like why it's so near and dear to your heart that you've built your personal brand around that word?
So when I started as a pen tester, which is red team, right? And red teams attack, they test limits, they stress performance, all of those things. They want to see how far they can go. They want to find real risks. And but unfortunately, I was a terrible pen tester because I kept doing things like pair programming. I would do threat modeling with them. I would help them re-architect things. I would, I started like teaching little lessons, and my boss is like, "Why do your pen tests take twice as long as everyone else's pen tests?" I'm like, "Why is everyone asking for me?" Right? And so one day my second professional mentor sat me down and he's like, Tanya, you're a really bad pen tester because you don't pen test. You keep doing application security at people. You are a defender at heart. You do blue team stuff, right? He's like, you keep doing both, like you can't make up your mind. Did you know that's a job and it's a job you could have? And I think you'd be really good at it. Because I found pen testing lonely. I found it so like you must be a very patient, detail oriented person to be a great pen tester. And like I could lie to you and say I'm those things, but I'm not. I'm many good things, but not those things. And so because I kept doing red team and blue team, people started joking, oh, she's the purple team. So basically, I was at a conference and WannaCry had broken out during the conference, actually on stage. And everyone was checking Twitter. And so my friend Shannon Leitz was like, you're going to have to grow up at some point and get your own Twitter account. You just can't keep reading over my shoulder. Did you know they're free? And so my email address was She Hacks Computers, and that was too long. So I was like, I don't know, people keep joking I'm the purple lady. I'll just say She Hacks Purple. It's not like anyone's ever going to follow me. And so I made it that. And then, I got home and I spoke at the little local meetup, and my friend Kevin's like, oh, you show up here and you say you're She Hacks Purple, but you don't even have purple hair. So I put some purple in my hair just to like play a joke on Kevin. And then he freaked out. Everyone loved it. And so now if I show up at a conference and I'm not wearing purple, people get really upset. Like I spoke at the AppSec Village and I wore red last year. And I was like, I know I'm wearing red. I'm like, but it was an emergency, okay? And they're like, what was the emergency? I'm like, I look really good in red. And they're like, Tanya, that's not an emergency. But I'm like, please excuse my non-purpleness for just one day.
That's funny. And like the purple teaming sort of, I don't want to call it a movement exactly, but sort of that concept of the folks working together, the defenders and the attackers. I mean, that's exactly what
Collaboration.
you were doing as you were doing the pen test and then teaching them about all of this stuff. I mean, that creates incredible value for them.
I think so. My boss was not impressed. He was not impressed. But my next boss liked me a lot better.
I'm not a penetration tester. I'm a systems administrator, in most of my career, but I've done some ransomware emulation engagements with a couple of clients, but they're very much kind of a purple team sort of thing because we're in a controlled environment where we're emulating the activities of what an attacker would do, and then looking at how are they going to respond to that. And it's live with their tooling still in their environment, extremely collaborative, between the attacker and defender side of things. It's just it's so much fun. There's so much value to it. So I'm glad that you kind of stumbled into that, as you were doing those pen tests and realized that need.
It's such a good way to learn too, right? To complement each other and have these feedback loops over and over again.
In the intro, I mentioned the software development lifecycle. And for any of our listeners that aren't familiar with that, essentially it's the process that an organization uses to take a software idea, maybe a new feature, and then bring it to fruition and deliver it to customers and support it on an ongoing basis, in simplest terms. But it's a deceptively simple concept that can be really difficult to do well and even harder to integrate security into. And Tanya, I imagine you've got some thoughts on this as our listeners, as small business leaders, are thinking about their software development lifecycle processes. If they're in a business that's building software, what should they be thinking about? As they're considering integrating security into that SDLC process.
Absolutely. So first of all, if you're a small business and you're not following any sort of system development lifecycle methodology, whether it be waterfall, agile, DevOps, or if you're doing some wacky other less popular model, that's okay. You want to look at starting to have governance and doing it the same way every time so that you are reliably releasing the same level of quality of software. And so that's part of where security comes in, because part of quality is security, right? There's performance, there's usability, there's all the abilities, right? But if you have really poor security, no one's going to call your app high quality, right? Even if at first first blush, it looks good, but in the long run, it's not going to be. And so what I do is, so actually I have a cheat sheet that you could link to in the show notes if you want, because I like to give people a place to start. So there's two places where you could start. So you could start one with this cheat sheet where it goes through what I call the 5 phases of the SDLC. Now, if you're doing DevOps, I know theoretically we say there's 8. But basically, it's a list of all the different activities you could do during the system development lifecycle to ensure your software is more secure. And then try to do one per phase. So during the requirements phase, maybe you have security requirements. Maybe you have the AppSec person show up at the kickoff meeting and announce you're going to do the partnership model. I have like a list of items for every, so like during coding, release, maintenance, etc. There's so many things that you could be doing. Actually, I guess there's 6 phases that I list. But anyway, because once you release the software, you are not done. Another thing that you could do is you could look up OWASP SAM, which stands for software assurance maturity model. But if you've never looked at any of these things, I need you to caution you before you look at SAM, because SAM is comprehensive and exhaustive. And that's wonderful and terrifying. You don't need to do all of SAM. No one does all of SAM. Quite often, if I show that to someone that hasn't had a secure system development lifecycle before, they're kind of poop their pants a bit. So I don't want anyone to do that. I don't want to overwhelm you. And so that's kind of why I made the cheat sheet that's simpler and more digestible and way shorter, and kind of like, if you're not sure, start here. And so when you look at these lists, look at, what do I think I could actually do? Because, for instance, let's say you're like, I heard a lot about threat modeling at conferences, and that sounds nifty and fancy, but we have no one on our team that knows how to do it. And we have no time to actually accomplish it. It sounds odd, but sometimes people are like, oh, it's best practice to do X, so that means we have to do X, even if maybe that's not the best move for you. So maybe a better move would be getting an automated tool that you install that scans your code every time you check it in, because that's something that you have enough money and time to support. And there's some free tools, right? So you want to make sure you could scale your effort. So for instance, like a thing that might be a good start for a lot of people is, I'm going to make an API. So creating a list of requirements for APIs that every single project uses from then on. So you up front spend a bunch of hours making that list, or you read my book and you just take the summary out of my book, which I made on purpose for you. You take whatever it is you've got, and then from then on, all you have to do is just email it to people, right? And then maybe that's a process you totally can support with a one-person team in a small business, right? So I urge you to not try to eat the whole elephant and be realistic and gentle with yourself.
Yeah, right sizing these things is so important. Because to your point, if they're you mentioned threat modeling, like if they don't even have the foundation, going to do things like threat modeling, I mean, you got to start with the 101 level stuff before you get to like the 400 level classes, just like in school. Yeah, and start with the foundation. I love the idea of breaking that SDLC down into those phases, because those phases are pretty clear to think through and understand. And then just think, if we did one or two things in each of these to help manage risk, manage, security, build in some security stuff into it, it really can work well and be incredibly valuable. I mean, it can make real material difference to your software quality when you consider security as part of quality, like you said. I love it. And your work also focuses very heavily on training. How do you recommend they approach training for secure development in this? Like, as they're putting together their SDLC, where's training fit into that? And like, when should they try to put it in, and how should they approach that?
So my opinions have changed over the years. So in full disclosure to all listeners, I own a small training company and I offer training services. And obviously, I think my services are great. So it's funny, I was talking to a customer today. So I'll come in and I'll give live training for a day, or we'll do 2-hour sessions every Monday for the whole month. And they're like, everyone's all excited. They learned a bunch of stuff and everyone's pumped about security. And then you disappear for a darn year, Tanya, because that's when we can afford training again. And that sucks. And how can we follow up and do more things? And so that is the new business that I'm launching next year, with a learning platform with a regular lesson every single week, like a mini lesson every week that can be done on your time, and then a live lesson every month. And then the idea that I could scale for many, many people instead of just doing one client at a time. So I feel like there are a few things with training. So one, you do want, especially if you're starting your first AppSec program, bringing in a trainer is magical, because they'll get everyone super pumped. They'll help dispel a ton of misconceptions that people have. Because they're an external resource, there's the magic of being the consultant, where everyone listens to you, even though the security team told you that 12 times already this year. Tanya said it, and Tanya doesn't work here, and therefore she's smarter. And I used to be the employee that was like, but I told you that. Damn it.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's laughing. So you get everyone like super pumped. And then ideally you want to have regular check-ins where you keep teaching them. And this can be something your internal security team does, right? So this is how I started doing training. As I worked somewhere and we had brought in a trainer for like phishing, blah, blah. And we did that. And everyone was like, that was cool. And we saw behavioral change and we saw it improved our relationship. So that's another thing that you pay for when you bring in a trainer is improving your relationship, right? But then I was like, well, now what do we do? Because we're not going to have that for like a year because our budget's gone. And so what we did is, well, what became my job was creating training. And so every month I had to come up with some sort of lunch and learn. And that's how I started doing public speaking. I was like, oh crap, this is so much work. But there are actually things that can help you online if you want to DIY this. So if you're a small business, some of the things you could do are one, invite cool people that you know locally to come in and talk. So I ran a community of practice when I was a developer for over 3 years. And I had someone come in at least once every month. It was just a friend. And I kid you not, I would bake a cake as a gift, and that would be my payment. Sometimes I would make them a nice lunch, a homemade lunch, and like I would just persuade them with gifts to come speak for free. So there's that. Two, you can play really awesome videos you find on the internet, and the best place to find them. So I have a YouTube channel. I think I have good videos, but OWASP has more content than anyone else on the planet. The OWASP YouTube channel, they have talks from conferences for decades, and they're quite high quality. And so go through and find one that you really like and watch it with the team. Another thing you can do is sometimes you can present someone else's work. So if you go to my GitHub repo, which is under She Expertable, because all my things are named to that, I have something called Train the Trainer. And I have a bunch of my presentations in there with videos. So you get my slides, you get a copy of me doing it, and then you get a video of me teaching you how to present it and what types of questions you're going to get and what to emphasize and why this is important. And so then I give permission for people to give my presentations. And lots of people have given those presentations at work. I should probably put some new ones in there. Because right now I have like a DevSecOps one and I have a what is, introduction to AppSec one. But the idea is there's lots of us out there that give presentations that would be happy to share our slides with you, as long as you still give us credit, be like, this person's the smart person that wrote this, to present at work to your colleagues and your team, right? Because most of us that do all of the stuff that we're doing, like you having this podcast and me being on, is we want to share knowledge and help, right? So there's like a lot of things you could do. A couple other small tips are try to offer a lot of options for learning. So for instance, if you're going to offer to buy a book, if you can offer it in audiobook, physical book, and ebook format, because not everyone's a sit their butt down and read person. Like I love audiobooks personally, right? If you can make things accessible, so if someone is hearing impaired, if someone has visual impairments or anything else, if you can try to make sure that they're included, you'll get better results.
I like the idea of doing, the lunch and learns, lightning talks, and those kinds of things, because then it doesn't sit on a single person's plate every single month. Like you get different people on the team to talk about a different aspect, maybe that that they're interested in, that's relevant to the rest of the org, to provide that stuff. And yeah, it really is quite effective for maybe the cost of buying lunch for the team. Like, you put in your mobile order and have somebody deliver lunch, sandwiches or whatever, and spend half an hour doing some training and having some discussion around it. And that discussion's always really valuable too from that. So yeah, I love those thoughts.
The biggest value is when they ask you questions later. So like 4 days later, they call you and they're like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'd like some feedback or some advice, because they're asking you now instead of Claude the AI or Stack Overflow, where they're going to get probably a less secure answer than you would get. So you just built trust. And that's when you know you're doing a good job.
And before we jump to the callers, I have one last question for you. And this is one that I ask every host, and I love the wide variety of answers because everybody takes it in different directions. If you had a magic wand and you could wave this magic wand in the air and instantly have every small business owner, small business leader understand one thing about security, what would you want that one thing to be?
that software security is just as important as network security and anti-malware and all of those other things, and that it is a big attack vector right now, and it is going up and up and up all the time. And so almost more than half the data breaches, it might start with phishing, but the thing that made the breach was the software. And so quite often people are like, oh, but we have good encryption. And I'm like, I'm really happy you do. Don't stop doing that. That's great. But there's more. And so understanding that software is a separate issue and needs to be secured separately, and that it matters.
We've got some callers here that are wanting to ask us some questions. Are you ready to go to the phones and take some calls and answer some questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do the cybersecurity risks to your business have you confused? Visit Focivity.com/podcast. That's FOCIVITY.com/podcast and sign up to be a caller on a future episode.
Our first caller on the show today is Ched from Shreveport, Louisiana. Ched, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. How can we help you?
Thank you. So the initial question was, what can higher ed do in formal computer science instruction to make better software engineers? And I know it's a small, medium business focused show, but there's a corollary here or a similar question because higher ed, like I work at a higher ed, we consider ourselves a medium business with our revenue flow being our tuition fees, and we purchase products and services. So if how to make formal computer science instruction produce more application security minded graduates, if that's not a suitable question, if I as an ITS at higher ed want to purchase a product or service, so let's say like a cloud enabled software as a service, are there any kind of like industry standard vettings or testing that I can be on the lookout for? It's like, do I want to buy Bob's SaaS program, or do I want to buy like a secure, vetted, well-known, well-tested SaaS program?
I think are both great questions. So if we want to start with just kind of thoughts on what's missing in the education process first, and then, what folks should look for.
So last week I went to Washington, D.C., and I met for the very first time a professor that is teaching secure coding at a university. It's the first time. So I've met two that were teaching application security, which is how to build a software security program, right? Like how to build the security program for software. And so she was the first one teaching secure coding. I'm like, that's amazing. I'm like, how'd you hear of me? She's like, well, I'm teaching your book. And I was like, yes, that's why I built it. So I wrote my first book, the AppSec book, hoping and praying universities would pick it up. And I reached out to many, many universities and asked them, could I build a curriculum for you and sell it to you? Or could I build all the lectures and all the exercises and exams, but in an automated fashion? And they're like, no, you must come in person and we will pay you less than minimum wage, and then we'll own your content. And I was like, oh, that's the crappiest deal I can imagine. No. So I feel like they have to have some flexibility. So either they need to pay a wage that is not volunteer work. Because most of the people that I know that teach cybersecurity at universities, they're doing it out of the goodness and kindness of their heart. And I'm very grateful to those people, right? But I already do a ton of volunteer work. Like I'm on a board for a nonprofit for women that I helped start. I am on the OWASP Top 10 team and made us actually release a new OWASP Top 10. And like I do like a lot of stuff. And I don't think that that's the best way that I can help the world. So that's not what I'm doing. I do guest lecture all over the planet all the time. If you are a university professor and you're listening and you have a couple hundred people in your class, I will virtually guest lecture for free, no problem. But 16 to 18 hours a week, every single week, basically for free, no, that's unreasonable. So the system needs to change. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I've been releasing books and free content and everything I can think of to try to help with the problem. Ched, do you have an idea? Because you work in the system, so you probably know a lot more than me.
There's a tenuous link between higher ed and industry. That's the communication flow of the lessons learned travels across. And I'm moving now in other communities like Black Hills Information Security has a very strong online community, and so does Simply Cyber. Those are kind of like informal information flows, and I glean a lot from them. But my answer is really to just strengthen this relationship between higher ed and industry. Like, we need to know what the industry's needs are, and I'm also open to the sort of returning signal from industry of like, please formally train forthcoming and upcoming software engineers on secure application best practices, because we have all we have all the right vocabularies. We have shift left, DevSecOps. We have all the vocabularies. Now we just need to. We have the people, process, technology. So the vocabulary is the technology. We just need to implement the process of the training to get the people to be more robust, security minded programmers.
I don't have strong opinions on this because, I didn't do computer science, but some things that I've heard in conversations with folks that I know that work in higher ed has also led me to believe that there may be, in some ways, almost a marketing problem with this, where computer science is an older degree program. It's been around for a while, whereas cybersecurity is the new hotness. And folks are coming in, oh, I want to do cybersecurity. Kids are getting told, hey, cybersecurity is a great field. It's growing fast. You make a lot of money. And when it comes to how they want to like put the classes forward, do they market them and brand them as computer science? Do they brand them as cybersecurity? Like, how do they brand that even within the programs? And again, I don't work in the space. This is just things that I've picked up from a couple of conversations that make me wonder if that there may be some challenges at the universities with how do they just kind of brand these programs in the individual classes, and by they end up branding the cybersecurity stuff into cyber programs now because they're getting so much more interest rather than backporting them into the computer science curriculums potentially. So again, this is coming from things that I've pieced together and not really a strong opinion, but at least it's something that I think may also be occurring.
When I've approached universities, they're like, oh, secure coding, that will go in the cybersecurity class. I'm like, no, this is computer engineering. This is software engineering. This is core. Every programming class or program should have a secure coding class. It's different, the how to build an application security program. I would love that to be a part of computer science and a part of the cybersecurity program. But the secure coding class, so imagine this. Imagine electricians go to electrician school and they don't teach them safety. It's too expensive to hire Tanya at a living wage to teach safety, so we're not going to teach it. And so then none of the electrical classes have any safety whatsoever. That's some special extra program that you have to take on top of it that's elsewhere and also generally just not covered. And then we graduate them, and then people's houses burn down and they die regularly. That's what we're doing with computer science. So we have to change the system. You had a second question though, Ched. But your second question was about how to buy a good SaaS product and make sure it's safe. So software as a service for everyone listening. So this is not my specialty, just to be clear, because I'm the builder of the software, right? However, what you can do is, so ask them if they've had a pen test. Ask them if you can see the results of the pen test. Ask them if they are SOC 2 compliant or ISO 27000. Ask them if there's any sort of compliance that they're following. If they're like, what are those? You're probably having a bad day. You can ask to do a pen test. Now that costs money, and for a small business, I don't think I would recommend that, because to me that's too much. If I would probably ask around and try to get a more well-established product rather than like a startup that's 6 months old, because chances are the security's better because they have more customers, so more people have poked and prodded them. So that's another thing. There's this lady named Cassie Crosley, and she specializes in this. This is her bread and butter, and she wrote a book about it, and I know I should know the name of it. I've read her book. Thorough should be her middle name. So if you look up Cassie Crosley, she has a book that is quite intense. You don't need to do all the stuff in the book. If you did 1/10 of the stuff in the book, you'll probably be pretty great. But she wrote an entire book with O'Reilly about this, and I learned so much reading her book. Also, how I'm glad I don't have that job and that she does it. Um, it sounds kind of hard, but it's like the idea of vendor management, making sure you're getting what you pay for, making sure it's safe, etc. And so she has like lists and lists of things you can do. It's the best book I've found on that topic.
And one of the things too you can do is if the organization already has kind of internal security policies. Obviously in higher ed, the university is going to have policies. So if you look at what the university requires of their own systems, that can give you some ideas of what questions you need to make sure you're asking the vendor to make sure that they're doing things that are going to support your own security needs. And now it's also going to depend on what the system is and what it does, what kind of data you put into it, what other systems you may link it up to. If it's something that people are just using to, maybe do some project management and, some task tracking or something. And it's not going to integrate with a ton of stuff. And maybe at a small business, and maybe you're not going to put a lot of really sensitive data in it. You don't have to vet it as much. But if it's something that's going to have customer data in it, or potentially sensitive customer data, if this is a SaaS application that's going to have maybe personal health information, if it's a SaaS startup in the healthcare space, you'd vet a little more stringently. But just looking at what kind of data is in there, what responsibilities do we have with that data that we're going to put in, and then be able to ask them questions around those. And there are some standards around this. Like they can get really heavy, and sending these questionnaires, like they're not the best way to do these things, but you can use something called a SIG Lite. And I forget what SIG stands for off the top of my head. I think it's like standardized information gathering or something like that. But SIG Lite, there's a full SIG, which is massive. And then there's SIG Lite, which is a little scaled down. Like you could go through one of these questionnaires, cherry pick out, maybe not use the whole thing, pick out the important stuff, the stuff that you feel is most important, you most want to know. Ask them those questions. Either send them a questionnaire, have a phone call with them, and just ask them the questions and see what they say, how they respond, and how quickly they can provide you information is going to tell you a lot about their security posture and the amount of rigor that they have in their program. If they have a trust center site that already exists, you can log into and sign an NDA and download descriptions of their security program and maybe some copies of certain policies and things. Like it's obvious that they've been thinking about this. And they're most likely going to be in a much better place than an organization who takes 3 weeks to return your questionnaire and they don't have any things, and they have to like custom create anything you ask for. So there's that piece too. Just being ready can give the customer a lot of confidence in what you're going to give them as a SaaS provider, and as a customer, you can kind of infer some stuff from that.
Thank you for that information. It was good to see you. And as they say, I'll listen off the phone.
Absolutely. Our next caller actually is not a caller. This is a listener mailbag question. This question is from Icon. And Icon is from the internet, if you can't tell by using the handle. uh, Icon writes, in the context of free open source security evaluations, what are some best practices for effectively reviewing the pull requests and the changes from contributors that maybe you don't know into these open source projects and software, especially when the security team don't have the resources to, or experience to go through and vet this. Maybe they're not used to the languages that are being done, or just really don't have the skills to do these kind of deep reviews. I think this is a great question because so many tools, so many apps, we all stand on the shoulders of giants at this point. There's so much open source software that are like the Lego bricks that we use to build software underneath. And then we write the stuff on top that creates really cool business value, in the custom apps. So what are your thoughts on this? What are some, best practices folks can use for reviewing this open source software that they're going to pull in from sources that maybe aren't fully known to use in their own software?
So I feel like the way this person wrote the question, you can take it from two sides. And one is, I'm building software and I'm using third-party components and I'm pulling them into my software. How do I check them? But it also sounded like, from the way it was worded, that perhaps they work on an open source project where they have many contributors and they don't know all the contributors. And so maybe they're receiving pull requests from people they don't know. So first of all, if you can, just only have people that can actually check code in that you know, right? So if someone's going to become one of the maintainers, you get to know that person before you let them join your project. Don't let strangers join. Get to know them, see their other work, just like a job interview, even though it's free, because this is a way that malicious actors are trying to get in right now, is joining legit open source projects when they are intentionally malicious, and they do a bunch of cool commits that are good, and then they do something malicious. So interview them just as thoroughly as you would for any job and review that code. No one should be able to go to prod without someone else reviewing it unless you're a project of one. The OWASP Top 10, you think they let me just write the whole thing and send go? No. Someone else reviewed it and someone else reviewed it. Then we argued about something respectfully. That's what you should do with your code too. And so you should not let strangers commit code to prod. There should always be a second set of eyes on things, and you should actually review it, not just press the button. So for that, let's say that part's answered. So for everyone else who's building code and pulling in dependencies, because I'm doing it, no one builds an enterprise app right now without any third-party components, without a framework, without a library, a NuGet package, a Ruby gem, because then you'd have to write all of math, right? You'd have to write all of string formatting. Oh, so that's why we have libraries, because we don't want to have to build the foundation of everything. And so there are a bunch of things you can do. So first of all, there are these things called software composition analysis tools. What they do is they check all your libraries, framework, blah, blah, all your versions against a list that they've researched very heavily of things that they know are bad. And then they tell you, this one's bad, that one's good. If you have a good one, ideally, the software composition analysis tool can also do something called reachability and or exploitability. So I haven't seen the exploitability demoed and really great yet, but reachability, to explain briefly, so let's say you're going to do some math, and let's say the math module, it has statistics and it has geometry. And I want to do a bunch of statistics, so in my code, I'm calling all these statistics functions. But let's say the vulnerability is in the geometry part, and it's in one of those functions. So when we go down through the code, from my code into the library, the vulnerability never becomes reachable. I'm not able to reach it. There's no path. And so as a result, most of the time, like 99.9, you are therefore not exploitable, and there's no legitimate business risk occurring. So the more advanced ones will tell you this is reachable, and then that removes like 95% of your results off your list. And you can just worry about the things that are actually causing a business risk. So that's one thing you can do. And that is an automated, fast, scalable answer. On top of that, there are some tools out there like Exeter, and there's a couple other ones where they will tell you the health and risk of a thing. So they'll be like, yes, this library is updated regularly. Yes, we don't find any known vulnerabilities in it, but it's got one maintainer and that maintainer works for the Russian government and you are in the American government. Are you sure you want to install that? Maybe you don't want to install it then. Maybe you're like, I feel a little uncomfortable right now. Or maybe it's like, hey, there's this library and it was maintained by 18 different people, but no one's updated it in 2 years. Do you want to install that? No, you don't. So for instance, like let's say the library is maintained by the Linux Foundation and it's got 30 people working on it from time to time and it was updated 3 days ago. Oh, that sounds a lot more trustworthy. I would love it if like the software composition analysis people and the people that do like the dependency health, if they could have like a baby that was a product that I could buy that had both. So they're both kind of trying to go into each other's business. I would like to see both those things in the same product personally, and the reachability. And if I could have exploitability, that'd be magical. So those things help. The other thing is uninstall every dependency you're not using. In .NET, there's like a little button, or VS Code, there's a little button in Visual Studio. Just remove all the dependencies I'm not using. Reduce your attack surface. don't install stuff you don't need, right? Like, we don't want to have 400 dependencies. We'd much rather have 20. It's way easier to manage and maintain if there's less. So if you can find all the functions in 2 instead of 12, maybe you should use those 2. And I know that's not a popular answer that no one like really likes when I say it, but if we get less is more in this case, like less attack surface is better. And so reduce the number of things that you need. If you don't need it, don't do it. Also, when you're going through your environments, so I want you to update your frameworks and libraries regularly. If it's fresher and newer, it is more likely to be safer and more secure. But then once you're in dev and you're like, okay, I'm going to push something, pin your dependency. So in Python specifically, yeah, when you go across environments, I don't want to get rebuilt or something stupid. And then there's like a different version in prod than QA, than staging. Don't do that. Don't be that guy.
Yes, 100% on that. And I'm glad you mentioned that at the very end, because like that was the one thing that I was thinking with a follow-up thought on that is that pinning those things can help you. It's a double-edged sword, staying up to date all the time. You need to stay current, but at the same time, your system needs to stay a known state. That needs to be stable, and that pinning helps, to where you bring things in and your people are changing your own code, but when you change that open source code as well that's supporting it, like that needs to be part of the change control process too. And you can't just suck that in dynamically into prod if it hasn't been validated the same way your own code has. Not and expect to have good results, at least. Like it might work great for a while until it doesn't. And then you got a really bad day because you got some weird change that you have no idea what changed and when and why this weird behavior is happening, or new vulnerability. So
Ideally, you'd also have an SBOM that just has a list of all the things that you have in the versions, and it would be updated every single time you update. And ideally, like in a really great world, every week you scan your entire repo, because software ages not like wine. It ages like cheese in the hot sun in the summer. It does not age well. And so even if you haven't done any updating at all, just scanning to see if a giant vulnerability's been found in something that you've used, then you know you can take action.
And you mentioned the SBOM, that software bill of materials. That is another really good thing that in my consulting, I see a lot of orgs don't have. The engineers, they're trying to get their job done. And if they need a library for something, they'll pull it in, but it doesn't always get reflected in some inventory of this is everything we use in a way that the organization can review easily and make sure that they know what is there. The log4j call it a fiasco, I suppose, that happened. Was it 2 years ago now? I think where
2021, December,
okay,
it ruined my Christmas.
yeah, it's folks that if they didn't even know they had that in their environment, like how do they know that it's there, that they're vulnerable, that they need to do something without doing a whole bunch of work to figure out where is it? Do we even need to do anything? And having that software bill of materials at least gives them something they can look at very quickly to know, okay, this is not a problem in this system. It's not a problem. It's only a problem over here. And you can scope your effort a lot more easily. So
During Log4j, one of the software composition analysis companies, I had just bought their product from the place I was consulting, and they emailed me to inform me. They're like, we just want you to know we did a scan of all of our customers, and you do not have the vulnerable version of Log4j. We need you to go make sure everything is actually being scanned. And so I ended up finding out 5 more repos, one of which was a public GitHub repo that they did not know was public. I found a lot of fancy things when I did my inventory, and we ended up being okay. But the fact that they sent me an email to say, this emergency is occurring and I want you to know you're safe. Whoa, I was like, press the renew button. Demand more from your vendors. Like, I was impressed with that vendor. They should all be doing stuff like that when there's a big emergency.
and we've touched on it just a little bit, but there's a piece of this I feel like is worth having a little more focused discussion around, which is vulnerability management. When you do find something has a problem, in a software development lifecycle where we've implemented security in the tiers, like this is now a place where we're not necessarily secure coding at that point, but it's maintaining the code. What are sort of your favorite approaches or recommendations for organizations to approach how they're going to handle vulnerability management? Like once something's found, what do they do next in a way that's like sustainable as well?
So this is actually like a thing that I've started talking about recently is like the DevSecOps lie. So I love DevOps. I love it. It's the funnest way to build software, in my opinion. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to be able to automate my security testing. It's going to be so great. But what happened is we ended up with backlogs with 45,000 criticals in it. And the dev looks at it and cries, and we can't action it. And we look at it and I'm like, it would cost more than the amount of money. Like we'll go out of business if we try to remove the backlog. So what do we do? Right. And I think this needs to be a bigger conversation as an industry. So these vendors, so I don't mean to be negative about vendors. I've been a vendor. Without them creating tools, our jobs would really suck. So just to be clear, I appreciate that they make tools for us and I'm happy they do that, but I want more. And so they're giving us a lot of information, and I don't know if all of them are giving us information that's valuable. A lot of them are claiming they give us better context now. A lot of them are like, it has AI and there's 0 false positives. I'm like, well, you're still telling me I have 45,000 vulnerabilities and I can't do that. So what do I do? So until recently, I was consulting with IAN's research, and I only left because I'm starting a startup and I don't have time. I adore them. They're amazing. But I would do calls all the time with clients where basically we would go look at their backlog and talk about what's worth fixing, what's not worth fixing. And so I'm like, okay, this app, is it mission critical? Does it contain sensitive information? Like, is it public facing or is it behind a firewall that's internal only? Is there legislation that applies to it? When we're talking sensitive information, do we mean legally mandated personal health information sensitive, or like it's a customer and it's how much they weigh, right? There's different type levels of sensitivity. And so like once I have this picture, I'm like, okay, so what's the general threat model on this? So like, am I like, if we F this up, is someone going to die? If we F this up, is someone going to get the wrong t-shirt in the mail? Right. And like, I don't mean to say that it's not important that people get the right t-shirts, because quite frankly, I ordered something once and got the wrong thing and I was annoyed and then I had to mail it back and get the right thing. Right. Like that's not a good customer experience, but if someone's going to die, that's more important. So then once you have that, then we start looking at the stuff in their scanner and I'm like, who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Delete, 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 delete. Like I was working with this company that basically made custom t-shirts and had these like artists, and their entire website were just like cool pictures and where you could go buy it in a physical store, and it was static. And then their security team was just warring with the developers. Well, you have TLS 1.1 on the site and that's too low. That's, considered because you can do a downgrade attack, blah, 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 blah. And the security team's like, critical, must fix. And the dev team's like, wah, 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 wah. And I explained, like, I'm like, so it'd be a quite advanced attacker that would have to do this attack. It would be quite expensive. What would they get? What could they possibly do? What would be worth it? And it's like, they could do this, 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 this. Yeah, but they could attack you like that anyway. So like when we walked through it, finally the security team was like, oh, I guess we don't need to fix this. We'll not die on this hill. But they were like dying on this hill. And I was like, I don't think this is the hill you want to die on. Then there was something where it was a medium. And I'm like, for me, this is much higher. And here's the reasons why. There's no class that teaches you that. And then I remember I went and I spoke. So we had the OWASP Top 10 meeting after that. And I was talking to one of them. And he's like, well, like, and he explained the downgrade attack. And he's like, if someone was surfing that site at a Starbucks and someone could downgrade it and this and that. And he's like, but like the likelihood of that is so super duper low and it would be so high effort. So this would be like if a CEO was going to go to that site and like you're targeting them, you're literally following them around. They'll get them on any site eventually, right? Like if someone's that, and that's not good, and that's not your customer. And so, but it was an interesting discussion of us avoiding the hard work we had to do for 20 minutes. This is what happens when smart people get in the same room and they nerd really hard. I wish that the tools could explain it better. Like once I was giving a demo of a tool, like during my training, they're like, hey, we have some time left. Could you just show us this thing? And we're going through the stack analysis tool that the customer owned. And I didn't understand a lot of the stuff that the scanner said. And they're like, Tanya, I don't know how to say this, but you wrote 2 best-selling books about application security. If you don't understand what this damn thing is trying to tell us, how will we ever succeed? How can our devs know what this crap means if you don't know? What do I tell them? So I feel like the vendors need to speak English to us instead of security nerd at us. And I think we need to find a way to be more realistic. Like, this is a high if, otherwise it's a medium or a low. And everything can't be critical. Like, come on.
And business leaders, I think, should be willing. I don't know if willing's the right word, but willing to push back on the vendors if they've bought a tool and they're using and it's giving them this noise, to go back to the vendor and be like, this is noise. We need to fix this. How do we fix this? And put some pressure on the vendors to help them fix these issues. Because I've got clients that have the same thing. I mean, this is every company that does software development has this same problem. Is you have the tools that give you information. No, the tools give you facts, but facts just are. Information is within context of meaning. And you got to be able to take that just raw data, the raw facts, and turn it into information that you can actually use to drive a risk-based decision. But that's a higher level like process you have to do. So there's a lot of analysis that has to go with taking it and turning it into actionable information, because ultimately the person that has to decide whether you're going to accept the risk for one of these vulnerabilities or not, it's not the security team at the end of the day who's saying you have to fix these critical things. It's the business leader who is now accountable at a business like legal fiduciary sort of level to the organization that has to make that decision. And the security folks can advocate for something, but at the end of the day, that business leader has to understand it well enough to accept it. And a lot of times that can't be the CISO, the chief information security officer. They can't own security liability for the entire company. Like, the business leaders in their business departments, the lines of business, the product owners, the other executives often are the ones that have to be able to accept these risks. And if you can't explain it, if your tool doesn't give you enough information to even have your technical people understand it, they're certainly not going to be able to understand it at the executive level.
I feel it's our job to explain to the business what the risk is, and then it's their job to accept or not accept. Because if we don't have the authority to change it, how can we be responsible when it's wrong? I remember when I was showing the client their tool, it was like, error, you're using this function. And I was like, okay, what do we do? They're like, don't do it. And I'm like, I know, but what can I use instead? Like, what are any of the other options, or what would be a more secure way to do this? And it was like, don't do this. And it kept saying that. And by the 6th time, I'm like, I feel like the tool's saying, what if you sucked less? It was just so discouraging and negative. It was like, you're doing this wrong. What should I do? You should know. And that's a thing I've received literally in person, verbally, from security teams when I was a dev. It's like, you can't do this because the security tool says not to. I'm like, great, what can I do? And there's no alternative. And there needs to always be an alternative. You can't say no because I have a business requirement to meet. And I'm a dev and I'm going to meet it, right? I'm not going to fail my boss. I'm going to do what my boss said. And so if your security tool is saying, don't do this, but giving me 0 alternatives of what I can do, I'm probably going to do it. Or I'm going to do something else, but it might even be worse. Right. And yeah, I feel like our tools need to mature. And I know right now the industry seems to think that if you add AI, that is maturity. And for some of them, I am sure it's going to add value. And for some of them, it's going to waste time. We will see where the cards lie in probably a year from now. But I would like to see some innovations in the AppSec space instead of like the 55th SAST and the 400th DAST. They're like, oh, no, it's so different. I'm like, oh, because you added AI? They're like, yeah, I know you added AI, sweetheart.
I'm so torn with AI. Like, it can be really good for helping to evaluate large volumes of information, especially when there's ambiguity, where machine learning and other types of like automation logic and analysis, like if things aren't structured exactly the right way and, you start introducing ambiguity, like they can't handle the fuzzy matching kind of stuff. And like AI could be good for that. But the probabilistic nature where you could run it and get a different result every time you run it is a little scary with this stuff.
Well, and it's wrong. And if you're not in a place where you have enough education to see that it's wrong, and most of us aren't, like if I'm going to look at code, most of the time I can see what's wrong. Sometimes, well, this morning I was teaching and I'd missed something. And I was so embarrassed. I was in the client. I'm like, and then we do this. I'm like, oh, I made one of the mistakes. Oh no! and then we learned from my lesson, right?
Anybody can do it though. Even the
Yeah.
most senior engineers who are total experts.
Yeah, and I was working on it late last night for this morning. And so, yeah, I missed a thing, but I was still embarrassed. But here's the thing is that, like, we have junior devs, intermediate devs, we have all different levels that haven't had the same level of experience. And we're expecting all of them to magically see. Like, we need a better solution. We need to do something. I feel like we need to just like flip it on its head and start again. I don't mean that as an insult to the people that are creating tools now. Those tools are helping, but they're not completing the we're still fighting, right? Like we need more.
I guess my takeaway out of all this for small businesses is a couple of things. One is like this problem exists for everybody. Like, don't feel bad if you've got this tool and your team's going, what do we do with this information? Because this is a very common problem that the industry is still trying to fix. And you've got people on different teams who are just trying to do their jobs. This like it's coming from a good place. They all want to make things better, but they have different priorities and incentives that come from their responsibilities. And I think the approach for small business owners and it is really step back, be more collaborative between these groups and make sure that it's very clear that we're all trying to align to go in the right direction. And if everybody puts their heads together, they can at least do their best to take that noisy information and make it as usable as possible to make recommendations up the chain, but that it really comes down to risk. And it's got to be a risk-based decision of do we fix this or not based on like what are the chances something could happen? How bad would that actually be? What would the impact to the business and our customers be? And if we are going to if we accept it, then it's accepted at a high enough level that somebody actually has the accountability authority to do that. But also if you decide you're going to fix it, it's not a fix everything immediately. It's okay, we are going to fix this. When are we going to fix it? Is it going to be a fix this week? Like, is this a hair on fire emergency? Or is this something we can fix in 6 months as part of another project when we're revving uh, to the newest versions of a bunch of dependencies kind of all at once? And we already know we're going to spend the time to do all the regression testing around bringing things up to date again. Like, there may be ways that you can club these things together. So I think that's my takeaway for small business leaders that would be listening to this.
Can I add one more idea? So it's from left field, but if you are a small business and if you're going to hire a new developer, I would suggest looking for someone that has experience as a security champion so that you have some security knowledge on your team. You don't have money for a person where that's their full-time job, but a security champion is generally someone who has been trained up by a security team to do the security work and be in charge of that thing for their team. They champion the cause of security. They've had extra training and attention. It's not the same as having an application security expert, but they will invade your culture in a good way, right? They'll be like, oh, we're not supposed to do it that way. We're supposed to do it this way. Or, oh, do we have a standard for that? Because I have one from where I used to work. And they can bring this wealth of knowledge and kind of get you just like pull up the line just a bit to a more reasonable level. And I always tell people, like, when you're a security champion, like, this looks amazing on your resume. And they're like, oh, so I can join the security team. I'm like, if I pick a developer with 8 years experience or a developer with 8 years experience, but 2 of those years were as a champion, obviously I'm going to pick the person that went above and beyond every single day, who has a specialty, who has wanted to better themselves and train themselves on top of the regular job, yeah, I'm going to pick that person. Right. And so if you could even put in the job description, like preference for someone that has experience as a security champion, you'll attract a certain type of person too with that job description, because they're like, oh, I get to do that cool stuff I learned.
That's a great idea, because the cultural impact of that, it just like safety. Yeah, if we look at other industries, like you have to have a culture of safety in manufacturing, in aviation, in any other industry. Like we have to have a culture of security in software development and small business and, well, any business organization, honestly, these days. So yeah, great point. Any closing thoughts as we start to wrap up here? Anything we didn't mention or whatever that maybe you think is something we should drive home, or anything like that?
We just released the new OWASP Top 10 2025 last week. It's the release candidate, but basically the 10 are done. We're just editing language at this point, and then we're going to do translation. So we just want the community's feedback to make sure the mitigations that we said are good. We didn't miss anything, but it's like 99% complete. And so if you're thinking, oh, I need to teach my devs something and I have no idea what to teach them, the OWASP Top 10 is a great place to start. It's an awareness document, and there's 10 items. So I just gave you 10 months worth of content. And everyone ever from OWASP is going to be talking about it 24/7, because we are those nerds. And so there'll be lots of content about it. And so if you're like, I have no idea what to say to these nice developers, say that, talk about that. Even just sending it to them and being like, hey, I heard this was a thing. It's a great place to start. And sometimes I find like the starting is the hardest part. And so I like giving people an easy place to start.
One of the things that I've been thinking about as we've been talking about kind of all of this stuff is, in small businesses with really limited budgets, they don't have the budget to hire a full-time security person, because very, very few do. There are firms out there that can provide on a fractional basis this kind of expertise. Maybe you only need it for a few hours a week, just to review stuff, to look at things. Maybe it's just on a monthly basis to look over that list of vulnerabilities and just help the team separate out what's truly important, what's not, maybe in a first pass or something, so that they know what to focus the real efforts on. And that's something I would think that organizations should consider. Like if they're starting to take this seriously, and as they evolve their program and mature their program, hiring somebody internal for this, like that's usually not the right first move. The right first move is going to be spend a little bit of money on some of these tools to get it into your SDLC process through automation, because it's really hard to do this stuff without automation, to do it consistently, at least. So integrate some tools first before you put the people on it, and then just as needed, bring in that expertise on a fractional basis. And it's gonna be a lot more affordable than I think a lot of small businesses would think. And there's so many security folks out there that want to help. Like you said, they may have friends that would be, willing to, do some contract work. Somebody in the engineering team may have a cyber friend who's willing to do some contract work. Like it may not be super difficult to find these folks as well. You don't have to go to some big company to find this knowledge and experience.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great idea.
Tanya, where can folks find you online? Like if they want to follow up and ask you questions or connect with you somehow or whatever, like what's the best place or places to find you online?
So if you go to shehackspurple.ca, that's me. And there's a contact form, and that email goes to me and my admin, and she makes sure I read it. She's the boss of me. I have a newsletter.shehackspurple.ca. Every month, I just give all the free content that I made, and then all the events I'll be at, and then a meme, because obviously I deserve a meme. And then I'm She Hacks Purple on basically every platform. So if you like Twitter, I'm there. If you like LinkedIn, I'm there. I'm not on Instagram or Facebook because I'm not. I didn't find a lot of value on those sites for me personally, but I'm in a lot of places. And so, yeah, it's very, very easy to find me. I also have books. So if you like reading books, Alice and Bob Learn, I wrote all of those. Yeah, and then very soon you can find me on DevSec Station. So that's launching early next year, and it's going to be an online community, and it's going to be half free, half paid. So if you're like, I want to do stuff with Tanya, I'm going to make it so that you can do stuff with Tanya every month.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really think it's going to be valuable for small business leaders just because of all of the rich content and suggestions, especially the free stuff and the easy stuff that you've suggested that's accessible to them. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait till it comes out and I can share it with all my small business friends.
And a huge thank you to our listeners. We do this for you, and it wouldn't be worth making a show without listeners. So thank you for listening. And I also want to give a shout out to Michael Coburn for the awesome theme music for the show. I am Accidental CISO, and until next time, stay mindful.
Don't miss our next episode. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app and follow us on social media. Visit Focivity.com/podcast. That's FOCIVITY.com/podcast for show information and links to our social media pages. This has been the Mindful Business Security Show, brought to you by Focivity.